friends, hello, namaste and welcome. I'll continue with some of these comments and a couple of questions to talk about. Hi, I was so interested in hearing you speak of Jesus and Buddha. However, it was difficult to hear you due to wind in the microphone. And why are you moving? It was distracting and took away from your content. I say this with love. Well, thank you for your feedback. Yes, this was one of the very first videos, short, made on the spur of the moment, a long time ago now, in the last Vasa, 1 year ago, when I was staying in Tumkur. I think walking back from the village to my kuti, past the lake, something sprung to mind and I spoke about it. Very spontaneous, without any planning and any experience of recording videos. It was literally, I think, in the first week or so of doing this. And that video, not only because it's the oldest, but seems to be quite also the most popular video on this channel, because it's had something like more than 30,000 views. So it's a shame it's very poorly produced in that it's the one that has the most exposure, because yes, I'm all over the place because I was not really planning a video. And there is probably wind noise because I didn't have a microphone and I was trying to work out how to speak into the phone yet have it far enough away from me. You know these things, if you know about this kind of thing, which I don't and didn't and still don't. Now it's very simple. I stick the phone over there and I sit down on the floor and I talk. So maybe I should remake that one, but it would never work. It's strange how the first is the worst, but seems to be the one that attracts all the attention. The next most popular of the short videos is just it's just a picture of my bowl of food. That's got something like tens of thousands of views as well, and that's a very unprofessionally done thing. So I do appreciate your feedback. Thank you. I hope that doesn't distract you from looking at these videos in future. You're possibly a Christian because you were interested in hearing about Jesus and the Buddha and my comparisons. I often speak of both Christianity and Buddhism in the same context. Coming from a Christian background country, I often find various similarities which I think warrant or are worthy of drawing a comparison, and not in opposition, but in conjunction, harmoniously, the two faiths. They go well together. So you don't be distracted from this channel just because I'm a Buddhist monk. It's maybe of use to you also. And I'm not moving about, you'll notice, so much now. There's some funny chanting in the background, but not any wind in the microphone. This is an interesting one. I found some discarded cotton in the form of a bed sheet, in the form of bed sheets. Would like to make myself a robe. Is there a particular robe style or template I should use? Or is it kind of the thought that counts? I'm not exactly sure what you're asking. So you found some old bed sheets, which isn't uncommon. People have such things in the house. Certainly in Western countries, we have lots of old bits of material and things. But of course, in the time of the Buddha, cloth was expensive. It was a valuable commodity, like expensive clothing now. because it had to be woven by hand and made, so it was hard to come by. And in the time of the Buddha, he wanted his monks, they are renunciants, they're giving worldly life up, so they would get rid of their clothes. And we have something we call akusala cloth. Kusala is beautiful, akusala is unbeautiful. So akusala cloth is traditionally attributed to that cloth which is used to wrap dead bodies in before they're taken to the funeral pyre, to keep them nicely covered so that the juices that are leaking out of them are absorbed into the material and not dripping. This cloth would not be wasted in the funeral pyre and would be removed from the body and discarded. Then the body would be burned. And if you go to a funeral pyre now, you'll see this. They're not in a coffin. They are literally there, and sometimes they'll spring up, their feet will go up and their head will go up and make popping noises and things. This is the way bodies are cremated here, burnt here. So the cloth wouldn't be wasted. It's a valuable commodity. It's not so easily available as it is in this modern day and age. And this cloth became, something useful. It could be reused, and the Buddha said, well, we as monks aren't allowed to take anything that isn't offered to us directly into our hands. This would be breaking our second precept, taking that which is not offered. For monks, it isn't just applying to stealing, it's everything. Food, drink, with the exception of water, and certain medicines, tonics. So for me that includes black coffee and water. I can have both, and if the hot water's already hot, I can make a black coffee. But I shouldn't really make it. It should be made for me and handed to me. However, it's technically not breaking any rules because coffee comes under medicine, and water we're allowed. Everything else has to be offered into our hand, with the exception of one thing. We can pick up discarded akusala cloth, this kind of dirty cloth that's discarded. People wouldn't want it, it'd been wrapped around a dead body. Now the monks were encouraged by the Buddha to collect this cloth, then cut it in order that the monks could have some kind of uniform pattern, which is what you're asking me, for a robe, not to look smart, not to look particularly attractive, but to have a way of using all different kinds of discarded, dirty, filthy cloth, to be able to put it together and make it look the same. So that roughly we had a pattern, a way of wearing a robe that we looked uniformly clean and tidy, smart. So he designed this pattern of the rice paddy fields that you probably cannot see, you will not see, but if you look at a robe, if you Google Buddhist monks' robes, you might find a diagram. There are like pathways, strips, thin strips, and then wider strips, which are like the paddy fields. It's called the paddy field pattern. But what this enables you to do is take all the bits of cloth that are ripped and cut them away, and with all the other pieces, assemble them in this pattern. So the smaller pieces are sewn together in this rectangular shape, like a bed sheet, but made of lots of smaller parts of cloth. So that's the standard pattern for a Buddhist monk's robe. It is washed, well, previously to sewing it together, but then it's washed again thoroughly, boiled. It is then dyed with whatever's the cheapest and most local, easily obtained dye available in the location where you are, which is what attributes to their different colours. So you'll see anything from dark brown to bright orange. I mean, if the colours of the dyes are like turmeric and such like, then the yellows will come out in the fabric dye. That's what they will be used. Often these dyes are also microbiotically not anesthetic, antiseptic, stop them going mouldy so much when they're damp, and we're not able to wash them very often, you see, because we only have 3 robes, an upper robe, a lower robe and an outer robe. So we can wash one at a time, but we're always wearing something and it doesn't always get the opportunity to fully dry. So rather than it stagnating, going mouldy, these dyes have these are properties of keeping the cloth a little extra, less smelly through their antiseptic qualities. So that's how the colour gets attributed to them. Now, it's slightly different to the Hindu traditions and Indian origins of them wearing their robes, the sadhus, which are made of one cloth, because they have no stitching. This is their philosophy, that they should have just one piece of material which requires no stitching that they can wrap around them. We wrap it around us in the same way, but it's made of bits of old cloth. So what you're asking is, you'd like to make yourself a robe. Well, if you're planning to take ordination, then you should go to a monastery. You can take with you robes, but more often than not these days, the monastery will supply you with robes that have been supplied by lay people already, so you don't need to do that. You also might have a bit of difficulty making the robe to this kind of pattern. It's not easy. It takes a lot of training and experience and practice. So I wouldn't do that. If you're planning to just make yourself a robe for any other reason, I would just question why. This isn't appropriate. It's not something one would do. It's not for fancy dress, not a toga party. It's not for fun. You even say in the chanting, these robes are not for, they're for warding off mosquitoes, cold, wind, heat. They're for our clothing, they're our protection. But similarly to wearing a police uniform or an army uniform, you wouldn't be wearing such a thing, impersonating a police officer or impersonating a soldier, or indeed in the West, a vicar, a priest, any of the clergymen in any religion you particularly have in your country. You don't impersonate those. You are only going to wear such garments when you are ordained into such garments. It's part of the ordination process. So it will be frowned upon very much to be wearing robes if you're not an ordained monk. If you just like the idea of them, I can assure you it's not the most comfortable form of clothing or practical. It is traditional. It's very old-fashioned. There's a certain way we wear them. That is the traditional way. But these are really just for monks and nuns to wear. Is it a kind of thought that counts? If it's the thought that counts, so if you're thinking about the offering, then yes, of course, it is all about intention. It doesn't matter what cloth you're offering. If you're offering some cloth, please, you just go ahead. If you have old bed sheets, offer them. The monastery will be able to make use of them in some other way. But usually people will offer suitable cloth that's already sewn into that pattern, even if it's white and then has to be dyed. It's kind of almost made. Yes, so if that's hopefully answered your question. And I think I put a link there. No, that's not for that. The next question is kind of along the same lines. How to become a nun and live with the Sangha. Well, Anumodana sadhu, sadhu, sadhu for your good intention to want to ordain and become a nun and become a part of the Sangha. And this is well within the realms of possibility for you. Depending on where you live, well, not depending on where you live, as long as you're able to travel, there is somewhere where you can go and ordain as a nun, a bhikkhuni. Now, you'd need to just Google this and find out in relation to your location, because you don't say where you are. You say Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddha, so I'm guessing you might be in India. Anyway, it doesn't matter if you can get there or save up and find a way of getting there. You can go to the monastery and ask for ordination or express your interest in ordination. Now, I've put a link in the reply to your comment to how to become a nun. My video on that, actually, I think it says how to become a monk, but when I say monk, I mean all sexes. There are two, I think, how to become a monk that I've done recently. The procedure is such that you usually go and live in a monastery for a while as a layperson, which requires you to help out with chores and duties, and it can be quite difficult. This is not just to take advantage of you, it's to really get you into the frame of mind of living within a community and also developing humility. We go into the monastery from lay life with all kinds of opinions and impressions and views about our own personality. Sakkaya Ditthi in Pali, personality view. We are this, we are that, a man, a woman, this is our job, we are this age, we have this family background, we have this experience, and we have these ideas about Buddhism, monks, and the practice. This you need to drop, let go of, forget. And one way of successfully doing this is to spend a couple of years cleaning toilets, sweeping, washing up, doing all those chores you might not ordinarily do in your lay life, or you might already do in your lay life. However, whatever it is, you abandon all views of ego and yourself, and you go into the monastery with a very clear and open mind. If not clear and open to begin with, it will need to become so before you're ready for ordination, because you're letting go of your life, your householder's life. You're going forth into homelessness, not literally without a roof at first, because you have the protection and shelter and refuge of the monastery, the Sangha. And they will welcome you with your good intention and help you in every way they can. In return, you will help them a little with duties and things for the first period of time as a layperson. You'd be on the 8 precepts, so you would not only refrain from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying and intoxicants, you would become celibate, so there'll be no sexual activity whatsoever, and you would not eat after noon. And there's no exception to that rule. Eating solid food finishes before midday, when the sun is at its meridian noon. There is no beautification, makeup, jewellery or nice clothing. You would wear simple kind of pyjama-like loose trouser bottoms, loose top, usually in a white, or if it's in Thailand, a sort of a violet-y colour of simple cotton, and no makeup or jewellery. And you would have no entertainment access, or you would refrain from using smartphones and such like for entertainment purposes. In fact, many monasteries will insist that you hand those in at the office when you arrive, and you probably won't see them again for some years. Then you are not to sleep or use high and luxurious furniture. Get used to really living on the floor with simplicity. If you're getting on in age, then it's okay to sit on a chair, even for meditation in some monasteries, but you'd need to investigate, and it depends on where you go, how flexible they are about comforts. But these days, most monasteries, I think, for nuns and monks, have a sort of a bed, a low bed, not very comfortable, but not uncomfortable. Or some are quite strict, like where I usually stay, or even if I stay in a monastery with beds, I always sleep on the floor, because it's my practice to sleep on the floor. But that isn't compulsory, that's out of choice. This would be then, you'd live like this probably for a year, and then anagarika ordination is the first stage, when you then would take 10 precepts, where just simply the 7th precept splits from entertainment and beautification and makeup to 2, making it 9, and the 10th is you do not use money anymore. So you can no longer use money, and usually into this one goes away the driving and being able to be free, as you are as an 8th preceptor living in the monastery, whom often might be required to go down to the local village or the shops to get things from the monastery. When you become an anagarika, you would wear robes like this, but in white, and this would be for a period of time of usually about a year. And this is really the first entry level to becoming a monk or a nun. Then, and it's different in different countries from now on, but as a nun, because you specifically said nun, so you'd need to find out about that. Go to the Anukampa project in the UK, Ajahn Chanda, just Google that, Anukampa project, Ajahn Chanda, and she can show you in the right direction towards Bhikkhuni ordination, which is the full ordination upasampada for ladies, for nuns. That's the best I can suggest to find out about that. But if you're happy with Mei-chi ordination, Thailand is very easy. You can just go to a monastery and you'd be very well looked after. But you wouldn't become a bhikkhuni there, you'd become a Mei-chi. There are monasteries also there where you can become a bhikkhuni too, but I don't know enough about that procedure. You can find this out all online very easily. If you found me, you can find that. Then after about a year as a Nanagarika, you could take Pabaja, which is Samanera ordination, which is a novice monk, where you keep on this 10 precepts, but you have an additional 75 training rules from the Patimokkha, our 227 Bhikkhu rules. They're contained within that, but there are 75 training rules, which are about monastic etiquette and everything from how you eat to how you go to the toilet, how you walk into town, how you wear your robes, all of these ways of behavioural patterns that we have to keep in order to keep the Sangha all in line with each other, looking tidy and smart, clean and tidy, and not making any adverse impression on the world, being unnoticeable really in society about the time we go out in the day and when we're not allowed to go in the afternoon, all sorts of things like that, to make our living in society less of an impact, other than if people want to come and hear the Dharma, they can come to us or ask us to go to them. Other than that, we do not infringe on people's lives at all, apart from early in the morning when we quietly stand outside their house and hope they bring us some food. If they don't, we move on. This would be usually for one minimum, but usually 2 years, yes? And then you can take full ordination as a bhikkhu or bhikkhuni. And then you take on the 227 precepts, and you are a monk or a nun. As you see from this, it's already been 3 years, and at this point you have to and are required to stay with your teacher for a further 5 years. You're dependent on that teacher because she is there to be responsible for you in your training before you're ready to go it alone, go wandering, for instance, or move from monastery to monastery. You can in that time switch teacher, as I have done, go from one monastery to another and change your nisaya, dependence, to another upacharya who is your teacher. And that's often necessary, especially if you're a foreigner in a different land with visa problems. So that's possible, but you're always under the auspices of the responsibility of a teacher until you've been a bhikkhu for 5 years. So as you see, you're not really fully independent as a monk for 8 years. It takes that long. It's not as simple, I want to become a monk, I've got my bed sheets, here I go, I'm a monk. Now, in the world there are people who do that, and that's fine. But you see, this is not necessarily going to get them the support they need of, which isn't much, but food each day, shelter, so robes, clothing when you need them, replacement robes, but then shelter and any medicine that's required. Other than that, we don't ask for much more, or anything more, because that is all we need to live from day to day and practice sila, samadhi, panya. So keeping our precepts, meditation, and developing our minds. That's a very quick summary of how you become a nun. You're not asking me where. As I said, you can Google that, and it depends where you live, and I've given you 2 links to some videos which I hope are useful to help you find, just repeating what I've just said there, that's the summary. So that's how you do it. It does take a long time. On that point, you see, when you become a monk or a nun, then after a while you'll fit into a category. You might be interested in just meditation, and you might be interested in meditation in a group with other people, or you might have more of an aspiration to live in solitude and meditate alone. I like to be in solitude, which is why I'm usually moving around to different places, and my practice is meditation. I'm not a study monk, one who wants to study the suttas. I've done my bit, researched enough to base my practice on what is a limited understanding of the Pali Canon, the Buddhist scriptures, enough of an understanding to simply put it into what I know into practice. But however, it still requires that background of training for you to be, well, officially an ordained monk. Now, this does come into, it isn't something you can, how do you put it? It is a necessary thing, a proper ordination, an ordination certificate, proof of your experience, which comes about through your behaviour, actually. And when you travel, when you're able to, when you're allowed to, when you go to different countries and different monasteries, they require evidence of this, either for visa purposes or in the monastery itself. They don't just let anybody come in and say, hey, I'm a monk, that's it. They want to know firstly how many vassas you are, how many rains retreats, this period of time you've gone through, because that's how they determine where to put you in the dinner queue, basically, and where to sit you. There's no hierarchy of attainment. It's purely done on the years you've been in these robes as a monk, since your upasampada, your full ordination. So it's used just to keep everything a structure about the Sangha, which is what you're asking to join, the Sangha. But in India, there are people wandering around dressed in all manner of cloth and robes. There are sadhus. Now, the sadhus actually have a similarly strict ordeal of ordination, which takes about the same time, if not longer. Ultimately, really, from start to finish, I think you have to say it takes about 12 years to become a fully fledged Buddhist monk. And a sannyasi or a Hindu sadhu, it's the same. It's officially with them 12 years before they wear orange. So those orange monks you see in India with all of the hair and the things and all of the jingle-jangle jewellery, they've been in white robes with their teacher hidden away somewhere for 12 years before they go out like that, mostly. But there are some who just put this stuff on and go out like that anyway. That's always the case. I don't like to use the term, but there are fake monks. You know, you'll see this in every country. If you see a monk asking for money with a begging bowl, then he's a fake monk, especially if he's got Nike trainers on and jeans underneath the robes, as you see, and they're selling malas in tourist places. These are fake monks. They've just put some robes on. There's nothing more insulting. Well, actually, it's not insulting. They're insulting themselves, their own moral virtue, because they're portraying what is a homeless beggar, a mendicant's life, but they're doing it for money when they are making a living over and above what is required. We're just as monks satisfied with a little rice, a little dal and some vegetables, some food each day, that's all. We don't need money. I get some financial donations through this channel which go towards supporting this channel, putting it on air, and occasionally getting me some coffee and some niceties, some luxuries like this. But I don't require that to live on. That is an added bonus, and it's very gratefully received dana, which I appreciate very much. And being that I'm in a country that's relatively cheap to live in, a very little bit of money like that goes a very long way, especially for just one monk who has limited amounts or limited things I can actually have or even want. So the life as a mendicant, as a monk, you have different options, and some choose to stay in monasteries all of their lives and become study monks, learning and researching, doing translation of scriptures, all very useful work. Some get involved in building projects, building accommodation, building temples, building chedis even, these stupas and things like that. Some are involved in maintenance, electrics, plumbing, all of these skills that are required to run communities. If you have a community, there are always going to be duties. So often I'm hearing Dharma talks these days from very senior monks, and it seems they're always talking about, we had the work period this morning and this happened and that happened. I'm thinking, I don't have a work period, because I don't. I get up, I meditate, and that's it really. There's nothing for me to do. Go on my arms around, get my food, and I meditate, because I live alone. So when my tree is no longer sufficient to live underneath, I move to another tree, or cave, or piece of shelter. And when my robe is dirty on the 15th day of the moon, the day before the full moon, the day before the new moon, I wash this robe. in water and dry it. Other than that, apart from cleaning myself, my body, each day at 3 o'clock, I have no duties. Some sweeping, if I'm staying in a monastery, I'll do some sweeping, but I try not to stay too long because you'll then get duties. Now, there's nothing wrong with these duties, it's service to the Sangha, if this is what you want to do. But if you really want to concentrate inwardly on your practice, you'll find monasteries where there are very little duties. They're very simple, they're very basic, there are no luxuries either. That goes with having no duties. If you want luxuries, buildings, pretty salas, kitchens, dining halls, chairs and tables, and 3 meals a day, albeit in the morning, or 2 meals a day, and all of this, you're going to have duties. Clean toilets and bathrooms and this, that. If you live outside in the forest, there are no duties. This is your choice once you've done the training. And the Buddha said, you can do this. You can live under a tree, in a cave, in an open space, in an empty hut. Or you can live in a community, in a monastery. Now for the Vassa, for 3 months of the year, we have to stay in one place. And usually, and up to now, I have stayed in a monastery. Or not even a monastery, this is what they call a vihara, which is just me, a bhikkhu, one bhikkhu, and there are a couple of samaneras here, and an anagarika. They're here not to look after me, I look after myself. Although the kapya, the layperson, so that's all of those stages I was just talking about. They're all here, you see, they all serve a purpose. He can cook, he cooks my food each day, my rice, my dal, and my sabji, because I don't get any food on alms around here. It's a Hindu village, Hindu town. So we all play a part, and everything has its own. There's something for everyone. If you want a community to live in, there's a community you can go and live in. But you'll be part of the community and you'll have community responsibilities. Like in an ashram in India, you go and live there, they'll want you to work in the kitchen, do some shifts or do some cleaning and this, that and the other. But if you're a monk and you want to just be like one of these, there's hundreds of thousands of sadhus who wander around India alone, in the mountains and in the Himalayas and down by the rivers in the Ganges. They all come together at big festivals, but then they all go their separate ways. And I've met many and spent nights with many, sitting in meditation and practicing all of different faiths and ideas, but living alone as mendicants, as solitary wandering samanas, which is the overall term for the wandering ascetic monk. A monk whom has very little, needs very little, and wanders. Well, this is the other option. It's the option I choose. I prefer to be alone. I don't want to be involved in community responsibility, work, monks, work meetings, projects. I can do that in lay life. I did that in lay life for many years. I wanted to renounce all of that. Not because I'm unsupportive of the Sangha. If you want to be part of the Sangha, you can do that and be a part of it and support it in that respect. If you want to just be supported by what you get, and it is only what you get, you can go days and days without food proper food, maybe a biscuit or something. If you want to be reliant on just that and you're able to, then this is an option as monks that we have after you've had the training and the okay to go out and do that. So there are various options, many options. In this day and age, it's much easier to find out about this online, but you won't always find all of the potential monasteries you can go to online, because I would say the majority of monasteries are not, or don't have any online presence. In fact, the more presence they have, the less I'll be careful what to say. There are some that are really quite commercially set up to attract a kind of monastic tourism. Now I'm just being very vague, using that very vaguely. I'm not specifying any particular, I don't know of any particular organisations, but just generally speaking, you can, if it's a big colourful website and they have specific dates when lots of people can come and you can take ordination and this, that and the other, it's a little bit of a commercially set up thing. I'm not quite sure about it's totally 100% within the Vinaya, I'm sure, but whether or not that would suit everybody, I don't know. You could just, perhaps the alternative is to just wander through the villages of Thailand or northeast India, and when you come to a Buddhist monastery, walk in and say, "Hi, can I stay a few days?" This is a much better approach if you can do that. But if you need the organisational structure, it's there. But you then become part of that organisational structure. You'll have jobs, you'll have duties, responsibilities, and it will lead on, and it becomes, you become a career monk, it's a job. But if you really want to just let go of everything and literally just wear these 3 robes and go off with your bowl, hoping you'll be fed, you can do that also. But not with your bed sheets, however good your intention is. You can do that if you come to India, because nobody's going to question you. But most other places you would be asked as to what it is you are, what your background is, even if it's just politely in conversation. But in some countries, I mean Cambodia for instance, if you're wearing robes, they had a lot of problem with fake monks, because people go there for these special, well actually they're Hindu holy sites, but they've become Buddhist holy sites like Angkor Wat. There were a lot of, I won't say the country, from one country, monks who were fake, just making money. So they've got a very strict legislation in place. If you don't have your monk's license in Cambodia, your ordination certificate, or proof that you're a monk, then you will be subject to a fine. I think the fine is something like $600 and 3 months in jail for wearing robes when you're not a monk. That's the rule in Cambodia. So it's serious. It's not just anyone can just put on a robe like you can a toga going to a fancy dress party and think that's cool. It's certainly not cool. I think it's rather embarrassing to see people who aren't ordained wearing what is inappropriate, because this isn't ideal attire for anybody. It's much better to just keep your 501s on and t-shirt, maybe wear a mala or something if you need some religious significance, and I don't know, do something with your hair, but you don't need to dress up to be a Buddhist. I'll put it that way. You don't need to dress up to be a Buddhist monk. It's inside. This is external, is just form. It means nothing more than that. It does have its practical reasons, and when you've been a monk for a while, you do realise there is a practical side behind these robes. I've really talked rather a lot there about the same thing, I think. So let's move on to the next question. Okay, I'm not sure what this means. There is one without a second or third, from the Lotus Sutra. Ekamawe Adwati, is it so? Well, I don't know. This is the Lotus Sutra is Mahayana Buddhism, but I recognise your logo. You're a Vajrayana practitioner, so maybe it's that also. It's kind of similar anyway. So I don't know about that. It says, but is there only one bodhisattva? Again, in our tradition, the bodhisattva became the Buddha, but in the Mahayana tradition, all Buddhists wish to be bodhisattvas. So I can't answer that. I'm from the Theravada background, so sorry. Well, this is a similar question. The bones of our previous karma, they are called samskaras. See, there's 2 languages. The Mahayana and the northern traditions use Sanskrit, and in the southern, the Theravada traditions, we use Pali. Pali, it sounds, some of the words are very similar, but have different meanings. But they're spelt differently and they sound similar. So, I'm not sure whether your samskaras is the same as our Sankara, rather. Not Sankara. I believe it. Well, my answer to you, I don't know what your question is. It's about, is everything an illusion? You believe you've put in good karma in the past life to be where you're at today in your practice, and that is most likely the case. That's not an illusion. You are the result of your causes and conditions. What you're doing now is as a result of the causes and conditions you have put in place through actions of body, speech and mind, whether that's in this lifetime or a previous lifetime. So that's not an illusion, that's the fact. You are listening to this because you have some leanings towards Buddhism, or you're of some other faith and this is of interest because it has similarities with that faith, or it's not opposing, let's say, because Buddhism doesn't really contradict any faith. It's always a result. Everything we experience right now, here, in this moment, is as a result of our causes and conditions we have put in place previously. Okay. So thanks. It is said that once you get a glimpse of Nibbana, you are a Sotapanna, right? So I'm not sure that's necessarily so. I did ask you who said that, and you said it was S.N. Goenka, so the famous Indian Vipassana teacher. Well, you see, it could be, it might not be. I mean, this isn't just, it's not a blatant rule like that. One could have a glimpse of Nibbana and not be a Sotapanna, or one could be a Sotapanna and not necessarily have a glimpse of Nibbana, I think. But I'm not 100% sure. So I don't know. I think people can say these things and they sound like good statements, but what facts they're based on cannot be determined, because if you're a Sotapanna and you had a glimpse of Nibbana, you're not going to talk about it. Whether you're a monk or you're not going to talk about it. There's no need to. You wouldn't even talk about it to yourself. You wouldn't question it yourself. You would just have that knowing. You've abandoned your ego, your personality view. You have no doubt whatsoever, and you've let go of any rites and rituals or hopes that that's what will lead you to some kind of attainment. So, having reached that level of Sotapanna, you have no more questions. You just have work ahead of you to slowly eradicate those defilements to become a Sakadagami when you've really made inroads on greed and hatred, so sensual desire and ill will. So you have less desire and less disliking until you're an Anagami, when you completely extinguish all desire, both of positive, so wanting, and not wanting, negative, and no desire. And with that, you then move on to becoming an arahant, where other of those ties that I've just discussed in the recent videos would be cut away eventually. Throughout this process, having attained to Sotapanna, you really have no doubt, is the primary thing. No doubt in this Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, our way of practice, and therefore really no questions to be concerned with, well, am I a Sotapanna? Have I had a glimpse of Nibbana? This no longer is a thought process. So it wouldn't come about. So this is one of those throwaway statements which sounds good at the time. A bit like that dodgy video that's so popular that was referred to at the beginning when I started speaking. It seemed like a good idea at the time, and subsequently I'm not so sure that it was. But there we go. Venerable Bhante, what do you think is the essence? I will answer this because it's the last question. It's very good that I've reached the last of these comments and questions, albeit that doesn't mean there aren't more, because these are just screenshots. But the last of the screenshots. Venerable Bhante, what do you think is the essence of the Buddha's teaching? Nice, easy one to finish with. You may have been expecting me to speak then for hours on Abhidharma or something. The essence of the Buddha's teaching is suffering and the end of suffering. And I will leave it at that, because that is the essence of the Buddha's teaching. I hope there's something of interest or use in what I've said today. If there is, please use it. If not, then just let it go, forget about it. Don't let it trouble your mind. And if there's something you feel someone else may find useful, please share it. Please share it with your friends. Share the Dharma from your own perspective, from these videos, from anything you find of interest relating to the teachings of the Buddha. It's good to share. That is giving. The giving of dana is a wonderful and meritorious activity you can do. With many blessings, with metta, may your path be enjoyable and fruitful towards Nibbana.